Hello, and welcome to the podcast. I am Angelie.
And I'm Sarah. Together with our team, we are Mountain Point Academy.
We are so excited to share insights into education with you and hope that you can find value in these conversations geared toward fostering lifelong learners. Let's talk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. We're really excited about today's topic because it was inspired by a friend. I was scrolling through Facebook, as you do, and I came across a post from a friend who shared her experience about what her daughter is going through with the public education system. And basically, just to summarize, she said she got a phone call from her daughter's school, basically telling her that, hey, your daughter is failing all of your classes except for show choir. That's the only one that she has an A in, and she is excelling. And so she basically expressed her concerns about this. And what she said kind of got us thinking like, oh yeah, what is it that parents are frustrated with about the public school system? And so basically to summarize, she said, that you want to take her away from what she's good at and make her kind of force her into this box of learning that maybe those aren't her strengths. And she was basically supportive of her daughter, saying, I love that she loves show choir. I love that she's passionate about it. And she knows what she wants to do. Like, she wants to go into music and has these dreams and this passion for this specific career field. And basically, you're squashing her dreams kind of thing. And then, of course, the comments came in and people were a little hateful about, oh, wow, you're basically teaching your child that education doesn't matter, that it doesn't matter that she learns English or math or, science, some of these other subjects. And so she kind of had to defend herself and say, look, I have never told them it's not important. I have just always told them to follow their dreams, and that education comes in so many forms. And so this conversation that was unfolding on Facebook just inspired us to realize, wow, there's probably a lot of parents out there that can relate to this, where maybe their kid just doesn't fit that traditional learning style, the system, how it works. They have a kid who's maybe neurodiverse, has learning difficulties, or just is super passionate about one thing and wants to focus all of their time and energy there. And so with that being said, we're going to dive in today to the 3 reasons why parents might be frustrated with the traditional school system. Mm-hmm. So Sarah, let's dive into one.
Yeah. So that story is so interesting. And it's just sad that it's like, okay, you want to take away something that's such a great thing. The fact that the school wanted to remove her from that class, it's like, oh, what a bummer, let's work on bringing up the effort or the skill level in the other classes if that's what you want the focus to be, but don't take away the one thing that she's good at and is probably making her even interested in school, period.
Exactly.
Right? So wow. Yeah. But you're right. There are probably many more reasons why parents might be frustrated with the traditional education system, but we just picked a few out today that were kind of the main things that a lot of parents struggle with, and also the reason why we started an online school and wanted to do something a little bit different. So the first point is that we have written down here is that there's less student-teacher interaction in a typical public school setting. So, picture your traditional classroom. How many students are in a classroom? 20, 30, maybe more. And class periods are pretty darn short. How much time does that leave teachers to interact with the students on a one-on-one basis?
Yeah.
I would say almost none in most cases. After the teacher's done with the lecture or the presentation or whatever it is that they're going through, the lesson, you have maybe half the class time left if you're lucky.
Yeah.
maybe only a few minutes, or you can break down into groups, which is great. As teachers do have a lot of great skills that they've learned through, the education system to manage a classroom, but it's mainly geared around the fact that we have to get the information to the kids, not spending time with individual kids. Unless, of course, you're running a flipped classroom model, which is more rare.
Yeah.
So a lot less involvement. It doesn't really offer teachers the time to get to know the student.
Yeah.
Like the book that we both read that we love, Fish in a Tree, where the student is struggling. It appears as if they're just not putting forth any effort in. But the fact of the matter is the student had dyslexia and nobody knew about it because nobody took the time to really listen to the student and find out what was going on and hear about the personal concerns. So many students are struggling with family stuff and maybe bullying at school. And there is all these underlying issues on why a student might not be performing, but who has the time to look into that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny because, we typically say, well, it's the teacher's fault that my kid's not learning or this or that. And it's like, well, we need to understand, they have limited time. They have limited resources. They can't be Superman all the time because they have 30 kids per class, and it's like in a given day, you're seeing 180 kids, depending on how many courses you're teaching throughout a day. And how are you going to get that one-on-one time with each of them? Maybe a school counselor has a little bit better capability to do that. And maybe the school counselor can help dive into that. But then the question becomes, how many students are actually going to their school counselor to seek out, hey, what classes should I be taking? Am I on track for graduation? And so there's a lot of different moving parts and factors in a traditional school system that maybe, not everybody's aware of as far as the capabilities, the resources, and the time that's needed for each student versus the way that it's structured. And so, I remember, math was not my strong suit. And so I would sit there, listen to the lecture, and I would be super confused and think, wow, I really need to ask my teacher a question. But by then you're in line behind 4 other kids after class who want to ask the teacher a question. You only have 3 minutes till the next bell's going off or you're late for your next class, And so it's like, when do you get that help other than, okay, hire a tutor and have them come to your house and give you that support, and not everybody has that luxury. So how is this going to change in the traditional school system? So,
and I feel like teachers are really like expected to be miracle workers.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. It's like, it's not the teachers, like they're trying, it's the system.
Yep. It's that lifelong debate of teachers are overworked and underpaid, right? Because a lot is expected of them, and yet they're put in this box of limited capacity. And so it's like, how do you magnify that and make the most of it? And so I think that's the beauty of online education, especially with private online education, is there's a little bit more flexibility. There's less regulations from, school district requirements and different things like that. So there's time for those students and teachers to really get to know each other. And I think that's one of the coolest things about our model is that we have it designed where every single student is going to be assigned an academic mentor, which is essentially a, credentialed teacher. And they have the opportunity to either connect with them monthly, biweekly, or weekly, depending on the level of support that they need. And that right there speaks to, hey, some students need a little more support than others, right? Others are going to be self-sufficient and I've got this, they're going to dive right in and it just school clicks for them, right? Others, not so much, like they have different learning difficulties or their brain just thinks differently. I think it's hard to create systems because it's based off of the norm and the majority. But it's like, that's not everybody. You have these offshoots. And how are you accounting for those kids that aren't in the same demographic? Right.
Yeah, it's difficult to foster a relationship when you're in front of a class of 30 kids.
Yeah.
How do you even start? Right? Unless a student comes to you
Yeah.
And I know like it always seemed growing up that the students who did well were always the ones that liked the teachers and got along with the teachers, and the teachers liked them because it's like, okay, you're easy. Like you ask questions in class, you pay attention, you do the work. And like, so it's easy to have a positive relationship with a student like that as a teacher.
Yeah. The teacher's pet syndrome, right?
Yeah. And it's like, but yes, that's great. I think that's amazing that those students foster relationships with the teachers, but what about the ones who don't, who appear like they just don't care? Do you just write it off as a teacher? Oh, the next teacher will have to deal with this one, because there's just not time.
Yeah, it's true. It's so hard, and we're not knocking on the system, but it's just, that's the way it's set up. And so it's a delicate balance, I think, for teachers to find that time, make sure the students are getting the attention, and keeping them on the radar, making sure they're not falling through the cracks of, well, it looks like you might be understanding. I haven't heard from you otherwise, but then your grade is reflected as, a C- or a D. And so where's the disconnect? But they might not have time to have those conversations, So again, I think that's the beauty of online schooling is having that relationship-based aspect where that mentor is really understanding where you're at personally, week to week, can provide that feedback. And, sometimes the wins of the week are, hey, you made more progress this week. It's not always going to be, oh, you're getting an A and you're excelling, but meeting the student where they are and recognizing, wow, this is progress for you. And that's awesome. That it's an individualized approach. And I think that kind of ties into our next reason why parents might be frustrated, is that, the level of learning isn't the same from student to student, right? There's different quality of involvement from parents. The home environment might be different. Some children might be stuck watching their siblings, while their parents are working. And so it doesn't account for those type of situations where maybe they don't have the ideal learning situation. So there's not this equitable opportunity for students at home to have the opportunity to explore education, do their homework, those type of things. And so you might have that one kid who's always coming into class and, hey, you didn't do your assignment. Like, what's going on? Well, I was babysitting my siblings because both my parents have to work. There's all sorts of different things that play into this and that aren't really taken account of in the public education system.
Right. Yeah. And it's a little bit different than online school because you're at school for 7 8 hours, and then you have homework on top of that. So like with an online school, you can get most of what you need to get done. Same thing with students who are homeschooled. I hear the same thing. You can get most of what you need to get done within 4 hours, right, out of the day. And that's it. Like that included your homework. That included everything you needed to get done. So it's a lot to expect students to sit all day in a classroom, consume the information, and then, okay, now I have to go practice it at home. When when do you have time to explore other interests even? Like it's very difficult. I remember I played sports growing up, and that was always a struggle with the balance because right from school, you're going to practice. Then after that, you need to eat dinner. Like by the time you even get a chance to crack open your books, it's pretty late at night, and then you got to do it all again in the morning. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for flexibility, especially given that students are just not at the same level. So for me, I was lucky and homework and all that came easy to me. But that is just not the case with some. And if you don't have a parent that's available and around to help you with homework, what do you do if there's no classroom time to ask for the help because the teacher is taking most of the time to present the material, which is fair because when is the material going to be presented, right? Like these are all questions that we have to ask to try to make the system better, to improve it. Is let's strategize about this. Like what can we do to make it better? And just with online school, I think it more closely aligns to the flipped model that some institutions use, where a lot of the instruction is something that the student can consume on their own. Yeah. Because you're not asking questions anyway to the teacher when they're presenting the lesson. Most of the time, they're just giving you the information. So why don't you consume that information through videos, through interactive lessons first. Then when you get to meet with your teacher, now's that time where you can get the questions answered that you have and not feel silly in front of your classmates, because that's another reason why kids don't ask questions. It just ties into this whole point is students are all at different levels, but we want to keep pushing them forward in the system, right? We don't want to hold students back. So how do we make that work?
Yeah.
We just
they're ranking the students. And so they feel, oh, if I'm not in this percentage, then I'm not good enough. It creates that kind of feeling of, oh, well, I should be at this level, but like you said, everybody's at a different level of experience. And, back to your point about sports and other participation too, is that kind of fosters that attitude, I would think, of, well, what's the point of education? Like, why do I have to go to school? Like, I'm good at sports. I like that. I want to do this. This is where I want to put my energy. And then yet I just have to do the grind. I have to do my homework and I have to learn these things that I just am not good at or I'm not interested in. And I think that kind of ties into, the students asking, well, when am I ever going to use this? What's the purpose of learning this? And that's a tough question. That's a question we get a lot is, well, when am I ever going to use algebra again? When am I ever going to use this again? And, back to earlier points we've talked about is just that really the whole purpose of education is to learn how to learn, because in these courses, math, you might not go into a math heavy career field, but that's teaching you critical thinking skills. It's teaching you problem solving skills that are going to be applicable to real world situations. So if we can help students see that as well, along with, hey, it's okay that you're at this level, you're still learning how to become a critical thinker. You're still learning how to problem solve. And that's okay because everybody learns it on their own timeline. And so not having a huge classroom of all these people and giving that student, like you said, that flipped model of, okay, I'm going to absorb what I can and see what I understand. And then I'm going to go to my teacher and present these questions and get clarification. And, maybe then they already come with, I think this is what it's meaning, but can you make sure that that's right? And then it opens that discussion and also allows students an opportunity to get more social interaction skills because they're learning how to have these conversations with an adult who is like, oh, hey, it's okay that I'm asking questions, because I think as a society in general, it's keep the status quo, don't ask questions, don't stir the pot. And so kids are scared to ask because they're like, well, I don't want to look stupid, or what are they going to think? It's this whole kind of mind game. So it's kind of a mental shift as well that can happen for students that are in an online environment, because it really is just them and the teacher. There's no outside pressure of keeping up with the Joneses and having to keep up with my classmates, because they're at their level and it's individualized for them.
Right. Yeah. And there's been quite a few students that have come through our doors that, okay, the next class they're supposed to be in is, say, Algebra 2. But when our teachers get in these one-on-one meetings with them and start working through some of these questions that they have, I just heard it the other day from one of our teachers. She was having to recap things from 6th, 7th, 8th grade math. The student had no idea. So I feel like, and this maybe ties into the next point that we were going to make as well, but it's almost as if there's a pressure to teach for the exam. Right? Like teachers in a traditional school, you have your student from the start of the school year to the end of the school year. So your goal is to get them from point A to point B successfully in that time, right? Yeah. So you're almost teaching to the standard, teaching to the exam, right? Right, because it reflects poorly on you if you have if most of your students are failing the tests and the exams. What does that say about you as a teacher? If that's where the focus is. That's what the teachers are going to emphasize in the classroom too. But how many times have you've basically been in the mind frame of studying for a class in order to pass the exam? What happens the day after the exam? Literally the day after the exam.
It's forgotten.
You could have asked me any question from the exam the exact day after. I would have been like, I have no idea.
For me, it would probably be like 4 hours later. I'd be like, well, I remembered it long enough to pass the test.
Right.
And now I'm good.
Right.
That's why history for me, I would memorize it long enough and then it was forgotten.
Right. It's a focus on rote learning, memorization, which was great, originally, but we're in the age of information. Like now we have to be more focused on building skills. And like you said, learning to learn and critical thinking and teamwork, collaboration, stuff that's applicable in the workforce today. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I just find it fascinating hearing stories like that too. It's like, okay, so this is a case where the student is supposed to be in a certain math class. They've essentially been moved along each grade level, but you ask them a concept from an early math class and they're like, I couldn't even tell you. I don't know. I have to do that all over again. I have to cover that again. Mm-hmm. Because it didn't stick. So either they didn't understand the importance of learning it, or they were just cramming short term to get it in. Who knows? There's probably many reasons. Yeah. But that's a very different model than the online model, where students are just moving through something at their own pace. And if you need to cover something again, we cover it again. Mm-hmm. You want to revisit something, you feel like it wasn't something that you were able to really develop that skill base, that knowledge base on that particular subject. We get to go through it again. There's no, classroom of 20 other kids that is like, hey, wait a minute. Like, why are we talking about this again? I get it.
Yeah.
It's about you, and it's about where you're at, and we're meeting you where you're at. And the teacher is identifying that. And at the same time, fostering that relationship and getting to know the student as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the beauty of the digital space is that, then you have your entire course. And if you're studying for your next test and you're like, oh, wait, I forgot that concept. Boom, go back, watch the lecture. Like, it's readily handy there for you. Like you said, instead of, oh, I need to go to my teacher and have them re-explain this again, and I might still not get it, So you have that flexibility to, oh, I'm going to watch this again. I'm going to watch it again, and I'm going to learn and take notes and reflect, and then just kind of really solidify the learning, because it also kind of takes that ownership of their own learning, because they have to recognize, oh, I'm not getting this. This is where I can find the information. So it kind of also gives them that autonomy to figure it out, and there's something confidence boosting in figuring something out for yourself too, right? It's kind of that, hey, I did it. I figured it out. Like, I had the resources, I found it, and now I get it. And it kind of is that sense of like pride that you're like, hey, I did that, and, again, not discounting the role of a teacher, but it just gives students that flexibility to do it at their pace, their level of understanding, without feeling like they're competing with their classmates. Because I think that's where a lot of even social anxiety comes from, is, oh, well, I'm not good enough and so-and-so's better. That comparison game is awful. Adults do it. So 100% teenagers are doing it, probably at a level higher than adults. And, this gives them the chance to really hone in on their own education and kind of take ownership of that, versus having some of those outside pressures, I think.
Taking ownership, that's something, a few of our teachers really are big on that, like working with the students to take ownership over their studies. And all of our students, they don't have to take the same courses, which is great, because in a traditional school setting, most of the students in a certain grade level, at least there's a certain number of courses that you pretty much have to take. Like, and same with an online school, like we still have state standards that we do have to meet, but we're flexible. Like, we offer so many courses, and you're not bound to a certain number of electives. Like, you can take any course you want, and you're not constricted to a certain number of hours per day, where we said most of our students are going to work 4 or so hours a day. If you want to take some really cool electives that we offer, go for it. It doesn't have to fit within your typical block schedule or, 7-class schedule in the day. If you are interested in something, we encourage you to take it. Yeah. We want you to take, experiential courses too. Get out there, get away from the computer. To the example that you gave earlier, the Facebook friend, the student enjoyed, it was show choir, right? Show choir. So if we have a student that's interested in something like that, go out and do it. Like, join a group. If it's not a class we offer, go join a group, go join a theater program, anything. Like there's so many things out there that students can get involved in. And with us, like we really value that. We understand that that's learning. It might not be your traditional core subjects that has to be covered per state standards, which again is still valuable information that we need to know. But if we start putting an emphasis on stuff that the student enjoys, it just renews that sense of just excitement about learning something new, learning a new skill.
Yeah.
And there's just as much value in that.
Yeah. And I think, that is what's lacking in this traditional school system is that skills-based education, right? Because it is so learn the basics, memorize this. It's rote material, kind of creating this, I don't want to say robotic, but kind of, we're all learning to think the same. We're all learning the same material, but then you get in the workforce and it's like, all right, be creative, solve problems. And it's like, well, but I only learned how to learn this way,
recite definitions and
right? Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so now how do I transition that? And that's kind of missing from that traditional system. But with a skills-based course, it's like you said, it's taking that ownership. They're excited about it. They're going to be more creative about it because they're going to think, oh, I'm excited about this. How can I make this work? And so skills-based education, like the experiential credits, are a huge opportunity that I feel isn't utilized enough in the traditional school system. But with an online program, like you said, there's a whole array of elective courses. And what I think is cool about experiential learning too is, hey, let's say we have a student who's super interested in, marine biology, like I was as a kid. Like, hey, there's this expedition, there's this experience that I get to go on. Cool. You're loving it. You're learning some stuff. How can we get you credit for that? Let's figure this out. Because then it's something they're excited about. They're passionate about it. And then if they can get credit for school, they're thinking, oh, awesome. This is one thing I have to worry about type of thing because I'm spending all this time doing this. What's the payoff for me? And experiential credits are awesome for that because it is really the sky's the limit, and we tell parents all the time, we're like, hey, if your students are participating in any kind of course, or any kind of activities outside of school, like motocross, dance, music, like so many possibilities, let us know. We'll look in to see how we can get you credit for that because there's learning happening. And sometimes the real world learning is the learning that sticks, that helps you remember, oh, I can solve problems. I can be a critical thinker. I can be collaborative with a team.
Right. That's the key is we still cover all the subjects, but we like to emphasize to students when we're working with them on that one-on-one basis, like, what are you getting out of it? What skills are you learning? And how are you applying that across all subjects? So not just can you recite this definition, but how are you applying, like you said, those 21st century skills, right? That skill-based learning. How are you applying skills in this class that can be used across the board? Writing skills, reading skills, collaboration, you name it, just like you said, problem solving, all that. It applies to anything that you want to learn.
Yeah.
So why can't we emphasize that in all courses?
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, then if they're excited about a course, show choir, whatever it may be, then yeah, how is what you're learning here going to translate to your math class? How is this going to translate to English? And then they might start making those connections and seeing, oh, okay, I get the importance of, I need to be literate. I need to be able to write and read and do all these things and understand the basics of, essays so that one day I can write my college acceptance essay and I can write a resume and I can know grammar and how that works, because really that's not going to go away. That's something you're going to deal with your whole life, right? Math, same thing. Like it's, you might not, like I said, be in a career where you use math every day, but in every job, there's some level of math required, really. It might not be experiential functions and, all the fancy stuff, but you're going to need a basic understanding. And so recognizing and making those connections, I think, is huge, just across the board, like you said.
Right. And that's one of the things one of our teachers, Madeline, was telling me few weeks back too is she likes to make real world applications to something specific that the student is learning each time she meets with them. So like they talk about it and like, all right, well, how does this apply? Like, what's the point, right? What's the point of this?
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating hearing how the students make those connections, and she helps them make the connections if they're not sure. And it gives a new perspective to what they're learning.
Yeah. And again, it speaks back to a teacher in a classroom of 30 might not be able to communicate that as effectively because it's not a one-on-one environment. You know, I'm teaching to the masses instead of the individual. And so it's cool that online learning has that flexibility to just be so personalized and help that individual student, which is great.
So it works for many, but it doesn't work for all. So the question is, do we try to fix the system or adjust the system, or do we leave the system as is because it works for many and make sure that parents are educated on the other options that are out there? So,
and I think, I think that's the trick. That's the mission. And I think that's probably why there are so many, schooling options out there, because you got to find what works for you, because again, we all think differently. We all have different learning styles. And so you got to find that right fit. And so if you're a parent out there listening that's thinking, man, the school system is just not working for my kid, I have not found something that works, we're doing free consultation calls. So give us a call, set it up. We will be happy to talk with you about your student's individual situation and just provide insight to see if maybe we are a good fit. We work with a lot of students that come to us with learning difficulties, IEPs, 504s, and, we kind of meet them where they are to help them just get that excitement back, build the confidence that, hey, I can do this, and sometimes the little victories are just inspiring that confidence in them too, and helping them see that they're capable and that they can do this, because sometimes the traditional system just kind of pushes them aside and they aren't seen as much. So if you're in that situation and you're curious about what our online program might offer, please give us a call. We're happy to answer questions and talk with you about your individual situation.
Right. And it's no pressure either. So ask questions, learn about us, but we encourage you to also do your research, because there are a lot of options out there, but we are super confident that we do what we do very well. We put the student at the focus, at the center of it all. But you're not held hostage to us. We want you to go out there and find what is going to work for your student. So we'd love to chat with you. We'd love to get to know you, and just also find out what you're looking for in a school. Because as we learn from parents and other educators, we learn new skills and new ideas to make our school even better. So please share with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes so that you can reach out and set up your own call. And we look forward to hearing from you. And we will see you back here next week. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode and you learned a bit more about the power of education. If you liked this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. Our goal is to get the rising generation excited about lifelong learning so they can continue to improve their quality of life, not only through formal education, but through the love of learning by exploring their talents, passions, and dreams. And if you have a student or you are a student, be sure to continue to listen for exciting Career Day episodes to help you figure out what you want to be when you grow up. And if you are on the fence about online learning or aren't sure if it's the right fit for you or your student, we are doing free consultation calls at mountainpointacademy.com/let's chat. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.